This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of my favorite people in Alabama politics and one of the most popular politicians in the state. I shouldn't call her a politician. She's a public servant, and she actually fills that job. Her job is president of the Alabama Public Service Commission. Y'all know Twinkle. Twinkle Cavanaugh is my guest. She comes on about once every year or two, but she's actually on the ballot this year coming up. So Twinkle, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
You look pretty. I love that blue.
Well, thank you. My favorite color.
I love it.
Except Election Day, and then it's red.
That's right.
How are you?
Doing good. You look great. Twinkle Cavanaugh, y'all, had an illustrious career in Alabama politics, even though she's a young lady still. She's been not only a great public servant. We were talking about Katie Britt, who's sort of a mentor. Twinkle's been a mentor for over the years. She and Twinkle both have had illustrious, successful political careers, but also been great mothers. I've known Twinkle and Katie a long time, and they put raising their children as a priority along with being a public servant, and two of the most popular political figures in the state. And Twinkle sort of mentored Katie over the years. You know, a lot of not just you, but a lot of older ladies, like a lot older than you, Kathy Randall, and all those girls who were at Girls State, Lee Grant Sellers, have watched Katie from Girls State on. You know, be governor of Girls State. They sort of mentored her.
You're right.
We were talking about her being a good parent, getting home and seeing her children like you do. Ann Wilkes, you know, you've been a devoted mother to Ann Wilkes.
All I can tell you is from experience, and that is the best role that God made for a woman, and that is being a mama. And I'm so blessed to have a daughter that's in 10th grade now, and she's at the same school with Katie's two children, and it's a lot of fun catching up when we see one another at work in the concession stand or at one of the games. But children are just a gift from God, and I am blessed.
Well, you can tell you spend a lot of time with Ann Wilkes, and you know, she's a great child, 10th grader now.
That's right.
Cheerleader at Montgomery Academy. But you and Jeff are blessed. Y'all have a good lifestyle, and y'all are a close couple and everything. Wesley and Katie are too, though. You know, they're close like you and Jeff are.
It takes a major support team to be able to serve. I think it's a calling. I love to serve. I love going to work every day. I love getting the phone calls when I can help other people. But the reality is it takes a team at home to keep everything going, and I am so blessed. My husband is a vital part of what I do. You know, when I don't have time to do the dishes and I run out of the house, sometimes he'll help out, or, you know, picking up carpool and things like that. He's a great dad, and it sure does help to have that support.
Now, is Jeff he's a veterinarian? Does he practice by himself?
He doesn't. He has a partner, so there are two at his veterinary clinic.
Does Lewis Benefield, he by himself, isn't he?
I don't know. I think he is. He's down the street from my husband's clinic.
Being a veterinarian here in Montgomery, do they just do like domestic animals? Does he go out and do cows and all?
He does not.
Okay.
He did those in vet school and said that was enough. But
he grew up here in Montgomery like you did, didn't he?
Right, and went to the same junior high and high school as I did.
Just go back and get in that area. Let's talk. I would do this every year when we're on, every other year. I like people to know how you grew up here in Montgomery, everything, what school you went to. Your mom was a school teacher, wasn't she?
My mom taught school for over 30 years. She taught at Cloverdale and Jeff Davis. She taught math, and then she also taught some in college at night at AUM.
Then you really were going to be a teacher, wasn't you?
Well, I taught school for 1 year. I taught biology and computer science at Houston Hill, right in downtown Montgomery. I taught 8th and 9th grade.
Right around the corner here.
Right around the corner in 8th and 9th grade. But teaching is also a calling. And I'm not sure I had that calling.
Twinkle, I agree with you totally. I have told people that over the years that when I tell my daughters when they were trying to decide their career, I'd say there are three callings, I think, in life: being a minister, of course, being a medical doctor, and being a teacher. And I'd tell them, I said, I don't care if you feel called to be a teacher, you do that, well, even though it doesn't make much money. Don't try to be a medical doctor because it makes a lot of money. You know, choose what you really want to do, but you got to be called in those three professions. Do you feel the same way about those three professions?
Absolutely. You know, in fact, I was getting a biology degree at Auburn, and my dad said, well, stay an extra year and get that teaching degree just in case you need it. It's great when you're raising children. But I don't believe it is a fallback degree. I believe that it is a calling. I taught for 1 year. I realized it was not my calling, and a teacher gets paid for 12 months, and believe me, they deserve every penny of it. And they teach for about 10 months. And I used that money then to look for another job, and I went to work for the Republican National Committee.
Right off the bat, you were in your
DC.
20s then, weren't you?
I was,
all
23.
Talk about your 20s, like what all happened in your 20s. You jumped right into Republican politics.
I realized that I was a conservative, and I wanted to see Alabama change. And obviously, it was not the same at that point. We had in Alabama, there were 5 Democrat congressmen and 2 Republican congressmen.
Dickinson was in there, wasn't he?
Dickinson and Shelby. I mean, excuse me, Dickinson and Callahan. Right. And then both of our U.S. senators were Democrats when I moved to Washington. And I wanted to see that change. And when I got back home, we had 5 Republicans, the opposite, and both of our senators were Republicans. And so it was really an exciting time to be in Washington. I moved back home. I worked for a member of Congress, Sonny Callahan. I moved back home and realized I wanted to stay in the political arena, and I wanted to see the conservative, you know, everything conservative to change to that. I didn't want to see Democrats continuing to be elected because I saw what a liberal Democrat in Washington really was all about.
Even though they espoused they were conservative Democrats,
they were
you
not.
got to choose.
I saw on a front row seat, I got to see how liberal they were and how they wanted to change America to socialism. And what we're seeing now is what was happening when I got to Washington.
How many years did you spend up there in that?
Well, I spent 4 years, and then I went back for 2.
But did you go the 4 years? Were you working for the National Republican Committee?
Those 4 years,
or all 4 years? Now, you worked some years with Callahan, though.
And then I came back to. I opened a restaurant. I worked for.
Here in Montgomery.
I did. I opened. Well, no, it was actually in South Carolina. I opened a restaurant. And then we sold that restaurant, and then I went back to D.C. for 2 years.
With Callahan.
With Callahan, Sonny
That's why
Callahan.
you and Joe Bonner are so close.
That's right.
He loves you like I do.
Well, I'll give you a little behind the scenes. He actually helped me write my very first resume. My roommate from college at Auburn was working for Sonny Callahan when I went to D.C. And he said, "Oh, we got to work on this resume." So he helped me out, and I actually ran as fast as I could in little high heels to get to my first interview at the Republican National Committee. I didn't start off in any fancy role or anything like that, but I told them if they'd give me a chance, I'd prove myself. And,
so you had 4 years at the actual Republican Committee, and then 2 years with Callahan.
Right.
And
you know, I look at what's going on now, and you know, just if you want to know what's happening now, look at what happened just 10 years ago. At the commission, I've got like that front row seat to what's going on with energy policy. And a lot of times people say, well, energy policy doesn't affect me. Oh, I beg to differ. It affects everybody.
No question.
If you get up in the morning and you take a bath and you use soap, it's a byproduct of oil. If you put your contacts in or glasses on, they're made of plastic, a product of oil. If you are driving your car to work, the asphalt is a byproduct of oil. The oil in your car, it just goes on and on. Plastics and just every makeup. If you put makeup on this morning, it's a byproduct of oil. And when the price of oil goes from $50, we've seen it go as high as $123 over the last 2 years. And then even today, it's at $83 trading per barrel. It's affecting everything you do in life, and that's where we're getting all this inflation. But the way I say is, look at what happened 10 years ago. President Obama in 2008 said that if you want to open a coal-fired plant, that's fine. But ultimately, I'm going to put you out of business. Well, then who's going to want to open it? Well, in 2002, President Biden said, you know, we're going through this major transition, but when we get through with this transition, we'll be less utilizing less fossil fuels. Okay, that's great, except what are we going to do? Go back to the dark ages? God gave us oil, God gave us natural gas, God gave us gasoline for our cars, and He gave us coal. In Alabama, we've got a 300-year supply of coal. It's clean coal. We have got to use all of these products to keep our economy just roaring, and we've got to have a roaring economy. But look at the past. Look at what's happened, you know, say 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago. They gave us, the liberals gave us a blueprint of what was going to happen, and we should have taken them at their word right then, but instead we thought, oh, maybe not too bad of a change. You know, my granddaddy was a Democrat. Wrong. We've got to look at policies and how they affect us and do everything we change to have conservative policies here in Alabama.
You know, Twinkle, you mentioned something about the coal reserves. Do we still have a lot of coal reserves in Alabama?
Oh, yes, sir. We
Mostly
sure
around
do.
Jasper? Where are they all over the state?
Jasper and Birmingham and all. Coleman. We have got a 300-year supply.
Coleman's got a lot of coal.
Yes, sir.
A 300-year supply in Alabama?
Yes, sir. You know, the story I love to tell is when I was...
I did not know that.
When I was campaigning the first time, it was raining, and I had gone out to a coal mine, and it was raining, and I put down the bed of a truck and got up on the pickup truck and back in the bed and stood up and started talking to a whole group of miners after they got off their shift. And one of them said, well, if you're elected, would you be willing to go down in the coal mine and see what we do? I said, sir, if I'm elected, you can count on me.
This is the first time you ran? Or,
yes, sir. And I said, you can count on me. So I did it. I held to my word like I always plan to do. And I will say, when we got on the elevator shaft to go down in that coal mine, the coal miner looked at me, one of them, and said, have you ever been up in a skyscraper? And I said, well, yes, sir, I have. And he said, 120 floors up? I said, well, I don't know if it was that high, but I've been in a tall one. And he said, well, you're about to go 120 floors down into the earth. And if I told you I wasn't nervous, I wouldn't be telling the truth. But when I got out of that elevator shaft and the elevator shaft opened, I was amazed, Steve. I bet most of your viewers would think like I did, that it would be black and, you know, it's a coal mine. But it's not. It's white. It's beautiful. The walls are white because when you were a little boy and you'd take that bubble gum and you'd open it up and it'd twist open, and back then it cost us a penny, but I don't even know what it costs now.
I went every time I got up, I bought baseball cards and had bubble gum in them.
But anyway, the inside of that baseball card or the inside of that chewing gum has a little white powder dust. That's marble dust made right here in Alabama.
Is that right?
It's actually edible. And
around Silicaga up there?
That is. And they spray the walls of the coal mine in that marble dust, so everything's white. And there's room, at least in the one I went in, that you can drive right down the middle of it. They go about 35, 40 miles an hour right down the middle of the coal mine, and it's very automated. There's no mule, there's no, you know, axe and folks out, you know, picking away at the wall. It's all automated. Wonderful, you know, high-tech equipment down there pulling that coal out. Now the coal miners are still operating that equipment. They are doing a great job. They are some of Alabama's best. But it is an interesting dynamic from what you believe and what it actually looks like down there.
Twinkle, you know, talking about that, and I was backing up to talking about how much natural resources we have in this state.
We're so blessed.
You know, I have judicial candidates who are running for the first time for the Supreme Court or something on the show, and I'll ask them, were they enjoying campaigning? Of course, you run statewide 4 or 5 times, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
How many times you run statewide?
Our state. Oh, you know, Steve, I've lost count because it's what I believe in. I believe in the state. I believe in serving. And I believe that we have these God-given natural resources and we ought to be using them. But don't get me wrong, I'm talking about coal, but I believe in our hydro. We have more rivers than any other state, and we've dammed those up, and it's like free power production. The dams are fantastic. I've walked across a dam when it was spilling over. A beautiful sight. I've been in a nuclear plant. It is an extremely safe place. Very well secured. I have also been in a natural gas plant. We just approved some solar. Solar makes sense in a few situations. It is never baseload energy at this point. There are no battery backups that would make it baseload electricity production for our state. But it has a place. So we've approved all of that, and I've enjoyed watching and seeing and touring all the different plants. But our ultimate goal at the Public Service Commission is to make sure people have utilities that are reliable and affordable so that we can make sure we're bringing jobs, good paying jobs for the folks here in Alabama. That's my goal.
You know, it went on the radar screen when we had that real severe cold weather in January, whenever it was this year. That most of the major power companies, Duke Energy and all them, went out of, they would have had blanks.
I can tell you the dates. December 24th, 25th, and 26th.
I knew it was right around Christmas or something. But
those were tough days.
Alabama Power was ready for it.
Yes, sir.
They didn't go out.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, that's pretty bad to have your power go out. I mean, you know,
well,
and all over North Carolina and every other state. I mean, real renowned power companies like Duke and all them went out of power.
You cannot do business if you don't have reliable power. And there's nothing that I could think of that would be worse than to have your Christmas Eve or Christmas Day dinner spoiled because you're all sitting around with blankets freezing to death and can't cook that turkey and dressing or what pecan pies or whatever you have that day. So it was a relief to see that Alabama Power and Spire Gas both stayed on. But just for your viewers to know, Alabama Power Company does sell more power than any other time on a very cold winter morning, early morning between 5 and 6:30 in the morning. Most power companies in the United States are summer peaking, but there's a reason Alabama is a winter peaking company. They sell more at any one point in time on a cold winter morning, and that is Alabama uses more heat pumps than any other state in the nation.
Why is that?
Well, I've been asked that a lot of times, and I just have to give you the best answer I know. The Supreme Court many years ago said that—
The U.S. Supreme Court?
The Alabama Supreme Court many years ago said that Alabama Power Company must be allowed to advertise. That had to be allowable because any company gets to advertise. And so that's how they ruled. And so they have chosen to use their advertising dollars for energy efficient ads or ads on how to use their products. And they did a very good job selling heat pumps. However, if they were in, say, North Carolina or any of the states above us, I don't think they could have done as well with heat pumps because a heat pump only works if it is over 32 degrees. So a heat pump after, below 32 degrees, you need a dual system so that the gas kicks on and it's a hotter heat. But as long as it's above 32 degrees, a heat pump works great, which is electricity. And so they did a great job selling them. We use more in Alabama than any other state, but we're just situated, our climate is situated so that it makes sense. And at the time, natural gas prices were climbing, and it really made a lot of sense to use electricity. So for that reason, they sell more in the winter at any one given point.
I bet you've asked that question on some kind of Alabama Jeopardy show. And you says is more power sold when it's 95 degrees in Dothan by Alabama Power than if it's 30 in Coleman. I guarantee you they'd say 95 in Dothan would be more power. But
that's what most people think. That's correct.
Think that.
But I say all that to tell you that on March the 8th, 9th, and 10th of 2020, right before the state shut down on the 12th for COVID, we had hearings, and those hearings were to allow, whether or not we did allow Alabama Power to have more capacity. Because what they didn't want was to have rolling blackouts if we had a really cold winter morning. And so December 24th, 25th, and 26th, the homes in Alabama were warm because we had those hearings and allowed them to have more natural gas powered electricity, or natural gas generated electricity, I should say. So I think the ability for them to see ahead and look ahead and plan ahead worked well. But, you know, I don't ever want to, you know, throw any black eye at someone else, but it's a constant thing to monitor what they are doing, to make sure that they are doing everything to ensure that the people of Alabama have, like I said, affordable, reliable electricity, affordable and reliable any utility that we regulate.
Well, you know, I was talking to, when you're talking about the Alabama Power Company being prepared for that Christmas cold weather we had, they really do work ahead, think ahead too. It's a really good company because for some reason I was driving the state that week, and I started in Birmingham and went all the way to South Alabama. All the way along the road, you could tell they were cutting back the trees. The power company had gone over than just having their power company trucks. They had hired out-of-state trucks to cut back the pine trees along every road where there might be power lines that would be knocked out. So they were ready to make sure the power wasn't knocked out.
And there are times, let me say, we do everything we can to make or ask Alabama Power Company to use Alabama companies to keep the power on. Whatever they do, we want them using Alabama companies. But you just brought up a great point. There are times when we have emergencies in our state, and you don't want them to keep an extra 1,000 or 2,000 or sometimes 5,000 people on payroll. So you want them, and we in Alabama have reciprocal agreements with other states. Alabama Power Company signs those reciprocal agreements, but you know, the users of Alabama Power Company are also, you know, as I say, they're the consumers. And they have to realize that we are paying those people when they come in, because I don't want them to think when Alabama Power Company sends their workers to another state because they have an emergency. Like I said, it's a reciprocal agreement. We as consumers are not paying for them to go to those other states. The state is paying to bring them in. But it's a very cost-effective way so that when you have an emergency, whether or not it be a tornado, we've seen those, or hurricane, or just a bad you know, freeze for many days, it's helpful to bring those people in from other states.
Twinkle, I want to kind of refresh our viewers who are watching, may have turned in and said, well, why is Steve and Twinkle talking about utilities and coal and everything like that so much? Average layman may not be sure what the Alabama Public Service Commission does. And so tell our viewers, like there are three members, explain the members, and two of them, the associate members, run in gubernatorial years, and you run in presidential years. You're the president of the Public Service Commission. So tell our viewers how long you've been on the Public Service Commission, how long you've been president, and the two associates serve this term, and so they'll know. They may be thinking to themselves right now, what is Steve and them talking about that so much for? They may not know what the Public Service Commission does.
Well, first of all, let me thank your viewers for allowing me to serve them. It is a true pleasure. I serve as president of the commission. I have two colleagues, Jeremy Oden and Chip Beaker, who were elected the last election cycle. They are up in a gubernatorial year. We all three run statewide. I am up in a presidential year. I serve as president of the commission. And
this is your fourth term?
Third. Right.
You served 8 years as president.
And this is, in my opinion, a very important job for the people of Alabama, because it directly affects them on a daily basis. But not only do we regulate Alabama Power and Spire Gas, but we also have some water, some wastewater. We have trucking. We have safety of railroads. We have ride sharing like Uber and Lyft.
Cover Uber.
We do all gas pipeline and safety inspections. In fact, this morning I was on television talking about how if you are going to dig this spring, if you are going to plant new shrubs, a new tree, put in a new deck or a new fence, or put in a new mailbox, call 811 before you dig. That is so important. That's another thing that we do at the Commission is gas pipeline safety, inspecting gas lines all over the state to ensure everyone's safety. But all of these things are so important. We have a lot of we were originally created as the Railroad Commission in the 1800s. The name changed in the 30s to the Public Service Commission. And sometimes people say, well, now, who decides what comes to you? And I always joke and say, whatever the legislature doesn't want to do, they put at the Public Service Commission. But I say that jokingly. We are quasi-judicial, quasi-commission, and we actually do whatever the legislature tells us to do. So I don't go to the legislature and push bills or ask them to support something. Instead, whatever they ask us to do, we carry out those functions.
Twinkle, I've written a lot of historical stuff about political history, and I remember doing research one time on the avenues to governor, and people may be surprised to know this. Lieutenant governor is not really a good stepping stone historically to being governor. Attorney General is better, but even better than that is being on the President of the Alabama Public Service Commission. I can think of two right now. The only governor Pike County had, Charles Henderson, was president of the old Alabama Railroad Commission, which was predecessor, and then the guy who was governor, Gordon Persons, came from the Public Service Commission, and there have been two or three others.
Jim Folsom?
Yeah, Jim Folsom, and then there's several who, more than lieutenant governor, have moved to governor from the Public Service Commission.
I am truly sitting in a place that I love to serve, but I also look on the wall and realize that there are a lot of great men and women that served before me. And just directly before me was Lucy Baxley, and she was the Democrat nominee for governor. Right before me.
That's right. Democratic nominee. That's right.
And my job is to serve the Public Service Commission, and I love serving. And so before I get off today, I want to make sure your listeners know, I believe if you want to serve, then you need to be accessible, and people need to know how to reach you. My office number is 334-242-5207, and Debbie Williams will answer that phone, and she can get me on the line if you need me. But I'll also give you my personal cell phone. It's not a government phone, it's my personal number. It's 334-558-5432. And if you need something, don't hesitate to call me. That's why I'm here, and I love serving you.
Twinkle, you're one of the hardest working retail politicians in the state, most popular politicians. Polling reveals that.
Now wait a minute, don't call me a politician. I'm a public servant.
Public servant, that's right.
Politician has a bad connotation now.
It does.
And what we really want is for folks to get in there, do what they say, and serve us.
Well, you do a good job. Our time's up, and I appreciate you being with us. Y'all remember Twinkle on the ballot next year. She'll be up for re-election to her third term as president of the Public Service Commission.
Now, Steve, this is my third term.
Okay, you're running for your fourth term.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought I was right about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. You know, I do have hearing aids, and I didn't hear, so let me make sure I say that right. This is my third term.
She's been on President of the Public Service Commission for 12 years. She's running for her fourth four-year term next March primary, right around the corner. Thank y'all viewers for watching. Thank you, Twinkle, for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to your viewers.